I hope all of you let yourselves compare and contrast. How do you fit with this type? How don't you? It's not that any of us will fit some kind of type and be exactly that type. The more that we learn about our personality, our perception, how we move through the world, what makes us us, what makes us different than another human being, the more we better know how to support our minds and our bodies and all of our goals. From the tangible life goals we have, maybe where we want to live, to the internal self-development goals that we have for ourselves. To be more confident in the world, maybe to be able to speak up if we struggle to speak up, maybe being able to be quiet and listen if that's more of our struggle. We have so many goals for ourselves and in relationship. The more we know, the more we grow, y'all. This is Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets mindful. I'm your host, Nikki Eisenhauer, life coach and psychotherapist. And on today's episode, I'm discussing 8 signs you may be an INFJ. I'm excited to talk about the Myers Briggs Type Indicator, the MBTI, y'all. The Myers Briggs is a widely used psychometric tool designed to categorize people into one of 16 personality types. These types are based on preferences. There are 4 dichotomous. That word dichotomous is just fancy for 4 distinctions. It's a contrast. There are 4 pairs of psychological functions. Extroversion and introversion is one. Sensing versus intuition is another. Thinking versus feeling is the third. And judging versus perceiving is the fourth. Now, there are all kinds of what I might call cheapy quizzes and tests out there. This is a highly studied test. This is a test that really seems to hone in on what's going on in terms of how we process, how we move through the world. The Myers-Briggs was developed by Catherine Cook Briggs, it's her last name, and her daughter, Isabel Briggs Myers, in the mid-20th century. So it's been around for a really long time. The Myers-Briggs, it aims to provide insight into how people perceive the world. And that's important because it influences how we make decisions. This is a big deal for highly sensitive people because we've often wondered, why do I make decisions my way? Why do other people make decisions their way? The Myers-Briggs breaks down the why there. This inventory has been utilized in various settings, including personal development, career counseling. You may have taken this as part of a job interview. You may have taken this inventory as a team building exercise. Just like with most things in science and in psychology, its scientific validity and its reliability have been subject to debate. And that's the thing, y'all. What isn't up for debate in the fields of psychology and all of mental health? We have these differences because different practitioners accrue different experience depending on where they go with their educations. This guides what a professional believes in over time, very different than what they might have been taught through their higher education. As practitioners develop in their careers, what we do in healing, personally and professionally, is greatly influenced by our experience. That's how life is supposed to work. This is also part of how we keep science and psychology healthy. We need to be able to question things. We need to allow for and engage different perspectives and never fall into the trap of thinking science has solved something or is so settled that we can't question, or scarier than that we shouldn't question. So today in this episode and everything that I share, please feel encouraged to question, to come to your own conclusions, to use my perspective to maybe come to your own. We don't have to be the same, and difference is not a threat. Difference is an enriching piece of our lives. I hope you caught that little mini update episode about what's going on with our podcast, with Patreon and algorithms. If you haven't, we would super appreciate y'all giving that little one a listen. As you listen to this episode today, I want you to really consider your levels of peace and what it might do for you to give peace a chance by giving my course, Emotional Strength Training, 30 Days to Peace, a shot. Listen all the way to the end. The discount code for listeners on the public feed is badass. If you are a part of our Patreon, you have a bigger discount. Instead of 30% off, you get 50% off, and you can find that code in the Patreon as a Patreon member. So I happen to love the Myers Briggs. I don't think I've ever had someone take this inventory that didn't like taking it, that didn't resonate with it. I'm sure some people might not like it, but for people interested in this show, if you've never taken the Myers Briggs, please consider taking it. You can find a very easy way to access the test going to 16personalities.com. The number 16, 16personalities.com. It'll give you a wealth of information, and it will give you your 4-letter type. And today I'm highlighting INFJ. That's introversion, intuition, feeling, and judgment. I'm highlighting one of the 16, the INFJ, because that's me, y'all. And many of you out there listening fit INFJ, whether you know that or not. New listeners out there, I want to welcome you. It's nice to have you. In recent weeks, we've been in the top 200 in multiple countries on the charts. And that only happens when y'all like and subscribe on all the platforms. So thank you so much for that effort. Longtime listeners, y'all know me a little better. You've been around, you've been hanging out with me. You've gotten to know me and my story. So it might feel a little different for longtime versus new listeners to take this one in. I hope longtime listeners, I hope that you can hear as I go through some of these criteria, some of these signs, how clearly I fit into this distinction, this type. I hope all of you let yourselves compare and contrast. How do you fit with this type? How don't you? It's not that any of us will fit some kind of type and be exactly that type. The more that we learn about our personality, our perception, how we move through the world, what makes us us, what makes us different than another human being, the more we better know how to support our minds and our bodies and all of our goals. From the tangible life goals we have, maybe where we want to live, or if we want to own a camper or a home, or be able to go on vacations the way that we want, to the internal self-development goals that we have for ourselves, to be more confident in the world, maybe to be able to speak up if we struggle to speak up, maybe being able to be quiet and listen if that's more of our struggle. We have so many goals for ourselves and in relationship. The more we know, the more we grow, y'all. Remember that we are fighting those monster algorithms. If you see our show out there in social media land and on any platform that supports podcasts, please, please, please remember to hit that subscribe and follow button. You'll get more videos like this in your feed. You will support the continued growth of the show so that more and more people can get this emotional education and be brought closer and closer to real, true peace. So let's get into the INFJ type. This is one of the rarest types in the Myers Briggs entire inventory. It's categorized by introversion, intuition, feeling, and judgment. INFJs make up less than 2% of the population. Less than 2%, y'all. We're known for our empathy, our insight, and our understanding of human potential. This right here, y'all, if I said nothing else for this entire episode, just this little nugget of information helped me take a massive exhale in my life. Not only am I a highly sensitive person, so if we look at highly sensitive people data, our best guesses are that we think highly sensitive people are about 15 to 20% of the entire population. And this means for HSPs that 80 to 85% of the feedback, discussion, tips, strategies, insights, therapy that we've been given and guided into are not really for or about us. This statistic of HSP becomes powerful every time I flip it, y'all. So we're 15 to 20% of the population. But when I flip it, you'll hear it. That means 80 to 85% of all of our interactions have been with people who are wired to perceive life very, very differently. Mentally, emotionally, physically, yes, even spiritually. So this just makes me want to say, wow, INFJ is 2%. No wonder I felt like an alien. These numbers, these very statistics, it's part of why the charting that we've had, the success of the show since the beginning is such a big deal. It blows my mind. The fact that we pull any competitive numbers to other podcasts that have more of a generalized audience. In a sense, I'm talking to 15 to 20% of the population, or the very special people who are not part of that 15 to 20%, but tune in because they love people that are in that 15 to 20%. This is such a highly sensitive win, y'all. So I'm going to break down 8 common signs of being an INFJ and just notice your response. Whether you've taken the test and you know your letters or you don't, notice your response in mind. Notice response in body. Notice if something feels like a yes. Notice if something feels like a no. There's value in what you don't resonate with, y'all. Like the law of attraction says, when we know what we don't want, we better know what we do want. When we know who we aren't, we better know who we are too. All right, number 1. You're just on a different wavelength. Take that in. Have you felt like you're just sort of on a different wavelength recently or all of your life? INFJs often feel like outsiders due to their dominant intuition. They find it difficult to explain how they know things, leading to feelings of isolation and being misunderstood, feelings of being an alien, a weirdo, other. Y'all, I have felt this my whole life. I mean, my whole life. I have conscious memories of these feelings as young as 4. I have a vivid memory of watching my family watch a football game, and I was observing them and trying to figure out why they were having reactions to the football game that just didn't resonate with me. I very much understood at 4 that I was different. Even as a counselor, in my training, my internship, this would come up for me. This profession has not really known what to do with intuition, has not really known what to do with spirituality. So in my counseling training and my internship, my first counseling job, I would just know things about clients. I worked in a residential treatment center. I got to spend a lot of time, not just with my clients, but I ran family groups. So I got to spend time with their families too. And I knew things that I couldn't articulate how I knew them. Because in my time, counseling moved to evidence-based practice as the end-all be-all. You must have evidence for what you're saying. I never had evidence for my intuition. I'd have to speak an intuition aloud and ask and get confirmation or not. What started happening was that I got so much confirmation, I was able to ask so many questions that I started being treated differently by my colleagues in a really positive way. Before I ever had the word intuition, my supervisors, my bosses, my colleagues would say in staffing meetings, Nikki, what was your sense of the family? What do you think is going on here? They gave me space to explore my intuitions, and I didn't even have that word back then. And over and over and over and over again, I get confirmation that my intuitions were more often than not very spot on. Clinically, counselors who are very disconnected from intuition or don't believe like I believe that it's in the relationship, it's in the relating, it's in the humanity in the counseling relationship that is primarily responsible for the bulk of the healing instead of some whiz-bang fancy technique that is responsible for some of the healing. They would say that I was projecting or I was assuming and that was very dangerous instead of seeing this gift that I had as a real asset in this profession. And that with the right boundaries, the right grounded consideration could really, really help me in my work and really, really help my clients in my work. Another layer of this for me in growing into accepting, okay, I'm an intuitive. I just know things sometimes, is that I grew up Catholic in a very Catholic city. I'm from New Orleans. And the truth is, I'm going to use a big word, I was indoctrinated into beliefs that anything woo-woo was the devil. Anything woo-woo was evil. And what that means when you're raised Catholic is that you're not even allowed to explore any of that, because if you go into any exploration in that realm, you are told while you're a child, while it scares the living daylights out of you, that you are inviting the devil. So it took me a good long while between that Catholic background and then the evidence-based hammering I got from my education from the era I became a counselor in, to come to my own understanding of the light of my intuition. It took me a long time to figure out how to lay down that implanted Catholic fear that blocked me from exploring myself and life and what these intuitions, what this energy, what this knowing was or might have been. How are you resonating with what you're hearing from me right now? Are you here tuning into this show because you felt an intuition about me, my work, the show, or what you might learn by tuning in? Are you here because you felt mostly like an outsider, and then somewhere along the way you stumbled upon this podcast? Have you had thoughts like, how does this lady know about me? All right, number 2. All right, INFJs out there, I feel this one so deeply. We're perfectionistic and we procrastinate. All right, y'all. So why do we do this? Well, INFJs, we fear failure. We strive for perfection. We aim to exceed expectations, our own and everybody else's. We feel driven. This is a strong drive. This desire for perfection often leads to procrastination. Follow me for a minute as I explain why. Now, on my own journey with perfectionism, y'all, I have come such a long way. I have learned how to not procrastinate. Now, this show has been a huge part of growth in these areas. The truth is, I think life conspires to force us out of our perfectionism, or at least to give us lots of opportunities to choose to let it go. I just think because of our drive, many of us, unfortunately, choose the route of endless anxiety through perfectionism instead of learning how to put it down. Now, why has this show helped me with perfectionism? We cannot keep a more than weekly schedule. We create, record, edit, produce, release 5 episodes every single month, and we have been doing that consistently since 2018. The truth is, there is not enough time in the day. I can't give every episode the kind of scrutiny, the kind of time and editing of every single word like my inner perfectionist would love to be able to do. Releasing these episodes, it has been an exercise. And I mean exercise in the same way that I mean exercise if I lean over and lift a 20-pound weight. It's been an exercise in good enough in every single thing that we release. I have to get to the place of good enough. I gave it what I could give it, and not let that perfectionistic part of me stall me out, stall out the show, stall out the forward momentum of life. For those of you who also struggle, it's not just perfectionism. The struggle is high integrity. That brings us into perfectionism. I hope after hearing me say this, that every single time you tune in, you remember what I'm saying here today. That there is no episode, there is no minute-long reel in our social media content. There is nothing that gets released where I don't feel through and think through that little bit of perfectionistic overhold and overlord in there that says, ooh, I could have said that better. Oh, I could have said that with more nuance. Oh man, I missed an opportunity to weave in this little extra lesson that I know would have been the nugget somebody needed today. Part of why I feel so driven to give the show such a useful critical eye, not a negatively critical eye, is because I respect your time, your effort. The way if we're healing trauma, our bandwidth is just limited because of our bodies feeling such a survival mode that burns up so much life force. I am consciously and intentionally driven to maximize serving you, respecting you, and being the most effective life helper and coach and healer that I can be for myself in my own right as a human being who has cultivated this career, just as much for you, my listeners, my students and clients. So the show has made me get more comfortable with the necessary reality of things must be imperfect. So I can let go of episodes with so much more ease, with so much less critical perfectionism. And that, in being less perfect, allowing less perfectionism, we've been able to reach so many more people than I ever would have been able to had I allowed that perfectionistic part to hyper scrutinize every single thing the way it wants to. Now, when I'm talking about this information, today we're using the lens of Myers Briggs. There will never be hard lines between our temperaments, our personalities, and then this is hard for survivors, how our early childhood trauma shapes us. It is most definitely a symptom of narcissistic parenting to develop perfectionism as its child. And the partner of perfectionism is procrastination. And here's a quick way I can explain this if this is new information for you or you haven't connected this dot yet. Why perfectionism and procrastination go together. If I give words to procrastination, what procrastination would like to explain to you right now is this, if I speak as it. Why should I get started on anything when the part of you that is critical and perfectionistic is just going to say not good enough? Thank you very much, but I'm just going to sit here like a lump on a log and give you double middle fingers. I don't want to do anything for you or with you till you tame that perfection, because that perfection just shuts me down. I don't even ever want to get started. Does that make sense? Now, I definitely developed perfectionism as a way to try to survive my family of origin by trying to be perfect. That was the best my little kid logic could come up with. This was how I kept my home boat, if you will, steady. This is how I kept my life, my home, myself, just as steady as I possibly could, even though that sucker was a rockin'. Sometimes the other people in the boat with me were flipping that sucker over. Little kid me, the best she could do. And it was really smart. She put together, aha, if I perform, and I perform well, if I perform as close to perfect as I possibly can, then that means I have value. That means I keep other people around me happy. They go, oh, good job. Yay, Nikki. Instead of using their energy to flip my little boat over. So this is a trauma response to develop perfectionism, especially coming out of dysfunctional family of origin. This is true. These are facts, y'all. But I also have a strong sense that I was born with a temperament and a personality and a spirit that was set for hard work. I was born to be a true speaker. I was born with a sense of integrity. I didn't try to have integrity early in my life. I just felt it and had it. I don't get some kind of moral points for that. It's just the way I was born. And in some ways, it's made moments of life really, really hard. But I was born with this drive to move toward the right things as I grew and away from the wrong things as I figured out what was more right and what was more wrong for me as I developed, as I grew, as I shed what no longer served me and evolved. This understanding, as I've broken it down today, it's helped me understand the double whammy of perfectionism that I just got coming into this world as a human being. This understanding of, okay, I really have this double whammy. I was born with it and then I was trained for it. It helps me stand in self-respect and self-care. I know, like I know my first name, that because of this double whammy, that I can choose a lifelong good enough while holding a torch of integrity and high standard. And this is where I want to live and work within. There is no destination in healing perfectionism that I get to and I just sit down and lounge like at the beach. As long as I am alive, I'm going to be challenged between the perfection and the good enough. I don't need it to be any other way. I know that that's the healthy tension that I'm going to live within. How do you resonate with perfectionism? How do you resonate with procrastination? And what do you want for yourself? Number 3. All right, INFJs, we're perceptive and we're good at reading people. INFJs have a natural ability to understand others' emotional states and motivations. They rely heavily on intuition to delve deeper into people's minds and are intrigued by individual uniqueness. This is so true of me. It makes me want to giggle. I certainly went into the right profession. Now, I just shared a negative double whammy about perfectionism, but how about a positive double whammy? We get those too. So I was born with a natural affinity for almost everything that I chose to take further in study. I pursued a psychology and then a community counseling master's degree. We developed the show, got all the way to here. Before being a counselor, I was a bartender. That's how I got through school, waiting tables and then bartending. I was really good at reading people over the bar too. The more I've honed the difference between intuition and anxiety in my mind and in my body, the more confidence I have, the more I have a sense of trusting my own perception and my own reads of others. This has been an invaluable tool in my life. It's helped me move towards people that are good fits for me and away from others who are not, all while navigating all the people and circumstances in the in-between with so much more confidence and grounded grace for me and for others. We went over perfectionism, right? I'm in deep acceptance that my intuition, my perceptive abilities, they are strong. I've accepted this. I've worked on accepting this. And I've accepted they are not perfect. They are fallible. This is very important to be a healthy empath, a healthy intuitive. Be wary of anyone, even of yourself, if you start to believe in a perfection in your own perception. When this happens, this is often a masked arrogance walking towards a self-important narcissism. Many healers in professions like therapy, yoga, spirituality, anything that leans woo-woo, pulls in people, attracts people that are using intuition, that are using energy work to mask arrogance, to control other people, to have power over others. People who do this are not doing genuine deep work on themselves and clearing out the traps of the human ego. They're handing the ego the power stick, the baton, and going, go for it. No holds barred. I trust my own perception today more than ever because I trust myself to be very grounded in the idea that I could be wrong. This is the humble balance that the human ego needs to stay reasonably headed, if you will, instead of fat-headed, to stay grounded instead of self-aggrandized. Number 4, as INFJs, we keep a small circle of friends. Now, this is another little nugget of information that I know some of you out there right now hearing me say this just exhaled. INFJs may have many acquaintances, but only a few close friends. Our strong intuition makes us highly selective. We value loyalty. We value shared values. And we also pretty universally quickly discard those who betray our trust. A big time worry of INFJs is there something lacking in me? Is there something wrong with me? We worry about keeping small circles of friends. So I've jokingly said this for years and years, coming from the South especially, that there is a general sorority or fraternity mindset Maybe now a Facebook influenced mindset of having 50 or 100 or 200 friends constantly surrounded for a lifetime. I don't know that this is reasonable for an INFJ or a deeply feeling highly sensitive person. For us, it may be more organic for us to have more people around us as teenagers or in school or early adulting and in college, because we have fewer real world, real grown-up responsibilities during these times. And socializing is the priority for our younger age. How our modern Western society works puts a lot of stock in young people socializing. It took precedent when I was younger. A lot of us process this as, what's wrong? I'm losing something. We very much feel the loss of the numbers of people. We also are highly responsible. So we tend to sit in responsibility even when the truth is life is just changing. We're not responsible in some kind of negative way. We haven't done anything wrong that our circles may get smaller as we age. Most INFJs, as we get older, report less numbers of friends, but here's the kicker, y'all, higher quality. I rather like this idea now because I've sat with it, I've worked with it, I've acknowledged it. I've grieved what is different now than the past. I've allowed myself a great permission to be in this season of my life instead of coveting some earlier season of my life and creating some problem with where I am now. Very genuinely, I do like this idea. I find it very peaceful, very freeing. A small circle of friends is all I really want to keep up with. That's all I really want to manage for the amount of hours that are in the day. I've let go of a societally induced sense of lack here. This really is okay. I like having less people, higher quality. And by higher quality, I don't mean that as a judgment. I mean that as a higher quality that actually fits me and who I am. Especially if we are seekers, self-developing, we're going to evolve. We're going to outgrow some people. We're not going to fit anymore today with people that may have fit very, very comfortably with us in earlier seasons. As we expand and evolve as INFJs, we really grow into not just self-loving, but liking ourselves. I enjoy my own company. I enjoy my hobbies that are typically singular activities. Not all of them, but most of them. I enjoy my own interests. I am my own best friend. And rarely, if ever, do I connect with the feeling of feeling bored. All right, number 5. INFJs out there, you're deeply empathetic. Do you see why I like this inventory, y'all? The Myers Briggs, this sucker has me pegged. I host Emotional Badass and speak on empathy regularly. I couldn't be more of a stereotypical INFJ. We easily imagine ourselves in other situations. That's our empathy. We can very much connect with and understand other people's feelings, their emotions, their struggle. On the highly sensitive person science side, what's being studied and proven is that it's likely that we have more mirror neurons as HSPs than the average human. The easiest way to understand mirror neurons is if you've ever hung out with a baby. Babies smile and mimic us sticking out our tongues at them because of mirror neurons. They're reflecting back what they see, and it is from their mirror neurons in their brains that they are able to smile at me or meet me in the behavior of sticking out a tongue. So as HSPs, take that in for a minute. Oh, that might be part of the difference in the hardware of who I am, not just the emotional side or the thinking side we feel and think. In the actual hardware, like the hardware parts of your computer, they're tangible, they're physical. Our brains are being proven to be different. INFJs, in terms of the human dysfunctional things we may have learned growing up or from society, INFJs, like lots of HSPs, can really struggle with people pleasing and codependency. In how we relate to others, it can be really hard to have a whole lot of empathy. I find it's one of the hardest life lessons for a deeply empathic person to have to learn. The moment we realize and start to live from the idea as a high empathy person that other people have normal empathy or lower empathy and we have high empathy, everything sort of changes. We have empathy like other people wake up and breathe. It's so normal and natural to us that we have a hard time understanding that we're the outliers there. We're the exceptions. We often accidentally set ourselves up through expectations of higher empathy from others. And then we feel sad, hurt, disappointed, crushed, confused when we don't get from other people what is so easy for us to give: empathy, consideration, listening, concern, holding space, basically. Part of what I teach when I teach boundaries, and I'm going to teach it again in 2025, but not this year, is to stop projecting our higher than normal empathy onto others and then feeling let down. We really can learn how to see and accept the empathy and insight and maturity levels of others as acts of grounded rationality instead of continuing to expect the world to act with our empathy. Everybody out there has their own unique gifts, and there's nothing new under the sun. Part of what I want for you is for you to learn how to embrace who you are without guilt, without shame. And learning how to say, hey, this is a strength of mine, is not arrogant. When we say, hey, this is my strength, we are not looking at another person and going, yes, and therefore you suck. We must learn how to sit in the simplicity of, these are my strengths, these are my limitations. I want to work on my limitations, but I'm going to own my strengths. If your strength is empathy, learn to own it. Empathy without boundaries is death. Once I heard that quote, it seared into my mind because of its truth. This is why I teach boundaries. Because the bigger our empathy, the more we need the boundaries. So that we don't, A, set ourselves up with expectations that are not available and not real. And B, so that we learn, because it is a learning, how to have boundaries as self-respect so that we don't burn ourselves out by giving all of our empathy away. Number 6, INFJs, we cannot stand small talk. I feel like we could have named this show Anti-Small Talk. INFJs, we find small talk boring, draining. We just prefer, this is part of how we're different. It's how we're wired. We prefer deep and meaningful conversations. This is often true of highly sensitive people in general, and extremely true of introverts, and even more true if you're INFJ. Small talk to us feels like its own energy vampire. We feel like it wastes our precious time and our energy. Respecting my time is high up on my list. I do not appreciate if somebody wastes my time. I have to work on being gracious if my time is wasted because that's a very normal thing to happen in a human life. The theory I have is that having more empathy actually takes more energy for those mirror neurons to process, for our minds to process, our hearts to process, our guts, our intuition, our bodies, our spirit, our everything to process. Therefore, we may feel more protective over our time, our energy, and our space. Therefore, we don't really value small talk. We very much seek to understand others' values, their feelings, their emotions, because it's what we value. It's what seems to make the world and life feel alive and move forward for us, is this depth. the trivial discussions on the surface. It feels pointless, draining. That's why we have a straight up aversion to it. It's not subtle. I'll have INFJs tell me, I hate small talk. It may be the number one anxiety whenever there's an invitation or an event or a convention where you have to go work a room. We can learn to radically accept this as our own personal truth. I hate small talk. And it's not an or. And we can radically accept that small talk is a necessary part of engaging the larger human tribe. We can acknowledge that we don't like this. It's not our favorite. And that sometimes we really do have to lean in. And we can figure out when it's right for us to lean in. And we can also, because we lean in, give ourselves permission to lean out. It doesn't have to become some strength that you have. You just have to know, all right, this is a limitation I have. And to make sure that it doesn't become a bigger limitation in my life, I'm going to do what I don't like sometimes here. And I'm going to engage the human tribe in some simple surface level small talk. Maybe we learn to give ourselves a treat after we do so. Number 7, future focused. INFJs, we constantly think about future goals, the next steps to achieve them. Now, without this drive, I don't know if I'd be here today. This may be another interesting double whammy of personality and temperament and trauma. Because childhood trauma, it teaches us that the present moment is awful. And a smart child learns to leave the present moment when it's awful and put their mind on the future that's not happening right now, that hasn't happened yet, that holds hope, that holds possibility, and maybe most importantly, is not the sucky, terrible right now. As a child, I remember churning on turning 18. I held onto it like rope climbers are hanging on to ropes. I damn near chanted, I'll be out of the house at 18. I'll be out of the house 18. I'll be out of the house at 18. I held on to this idea like it was my only life vest. Like I was floating in a big open ocean of life and all I had to hold on to was I will be free when I'm 18. I wound up leaving before 18, but that's another story for another day. Hypervigilance from true nervous system post-traumatic stress. And I say it like that because PTSD is now used in the common vernacular incorrectly almost constantly. PTSD is not, I say this with a 100% of force behind it. PTSD is not when the person you don't want to be the president becomes president. And if I just hit your button by saying that, please take a deep breath and decide how you want to handle that button. If you would be better to disable that button or keep it going. True, real post-traumatic stress as it affects a human being's nervous system, mind, body, especially if it's chronic PTSD, especially if it's compounded PTSD. Real PTSD comes from living in true survival mode, like a soldier on a battlefield or a child in an unsafe home, not getting reasonable emotional needs met. PTSD creates hypervigilance. It creates an almost future obsessed state because the system has learned way too strongly to leave the present moment. So this can be its own double whammy for an INFJ. This is important to know about ourselves because what we don't want to have develop here is a denial of the past, a denial of the present, and an obsession with the future that keeps us hypervigilant instead of grounded. If we are taking care of our inner child, if we are growing and expanding beyond dysfunction, we are learning how to stand firmly, safely, calmly, with integrated nervous system in the present moment. I've worked very hard to make this true, that my present day is safe. Not just externally, from other people or outward forces, safe in terms of I know how to be kind to myself. I know how to be encouraging. I know how to say yes very healthily to myself, and I know how to say no very healthily to myself. This is what helps me allow being in the present moment. When we can be more present, more grounded, we can make better decisions towards that future we dream of, towards longer term goals. So how does this idea of future focused hit you right now? For me, to keep it healthy, I want my future focus to be planning and dreaming, working towards goals, celebrating today in the present moment, all forward motion towards those goals. I also practice what I would call present moment life satisfaction. We can hold multiple truths as people, and especially as INFJs. I can want something in the future that's different than what I have now, and I can be grateful and satisfied with what I have now. As a practice, we can bring in the good enough principle here and practice feeling good enough, being good enough, thinking good enough in this present moment. And we can be future focused. How do you keep future focus a healthy construct in your life and not some kind of obsession that takes you away from your present moment? All right, the last one I have for you on this list of how you might be an INFJ, number 8, INFJs, we gravitate towards people who need help. Hello, hi, nice to meet you. I'm the host of a helpful podcast. I would say we don't just gravitate, we create entire careers, lives about helping. Now, so many of you out there like me, recovering people pleasers, recovering codependents, we feel a strong urge to help others, often seeing the good in people and forming deep relationships. It's beautiful. But this trait can lead to what some people call the broken wing theory, where a person overextends themselves in helping others, potentially causing frustration and stress, even resentment, dissatisfaction in life, even depression about one's own life, even as they show up as a helper in someone else's. This is a big part of why I teach boundaries. And I very much believe in the quote that empathy without boundaries is death. And this is why. In codependency and people-pleasing recovery, we're learning to honor these natural affinities to help others while also holding in high regard, helping ourselves. What I tell my clients is, hey, you don't have to stop being a people pleaser. You just have to realize you got taught it in a way that was a little skewed. You have to put yourself on that list. You get to please yourself too. What a beautiful thing to want to please others, but not to your detriment. And when we please ourselves first, we have so much more juice for this life, y'all, to show up and help others. This is the airplane mask theory in action. Every flight attendant has told us on every flight we've ever been on to put our own face mask on first. So if you have this impulse that the plane is going down and you better put the mask on somebody else first, the person next to you, the truth is you're going to pass out. And you're not going to be any good to helping anybody, not even yourself. We are no help to anyone in the end if we don't put our own oxygen mask on first. Codependent therapists are a real problem, and they're not very effective. They have a very fast burnout rate. In the Boundaries course a few years ago, someone said the term sacred selfishness. And y'all, I felt that in every cell in my body as a great permission. Our fears may be about becoming selfish a-holes, but we are not to become selfish a-holes in healing. We are to give ourselves permission towards sacred selfishness, the kind that puts its own oxygen mask on first, and then with full oxygenated lungs and body can be a real asset, a real help to others with no detriment to the self. This is the honoring of me, my personality, my temperament, my drive, and yes, even my trauma history that taught me to help others to my detriment. A trauma history that taught me that all I was worth was showing up and being useful in somebody else's life, being helpful in somebody else's life. And taking care of myself. I have been able to build my life and get all the way to here. There is no show that would have ever happened had I not given myself permission, even when it was scary, even when it still felt wrong, to put my own oxygen mask on first. When you show up and listen to this show, you're allowing me to live out my purpose. When you tune in and take something that helps you love yourself, that helps you understand yourself, that helps you see yourself with more clarity and less confusion, helps you deal with what's hard in this life, or helps you lighten your load, I'm living part of my purpose, and it's to be helpful. And I love that about me. Thank you for helping me with that. Thank you for giving me that. So, how do you feel about all these INFJ traits, y'all? Do you appreciate, if you resonate with these traits, do you appreciate these traits in you? If not yet, will you allow yourself that permission that you will grow into appreciating your natural traits? You get to understand and embrace these characteristics. You get to know more of who you are or how you work, more of who you aren't and how you don't work. You get to have true understanding and deeper relationship with you. And this is what leads us to ultimately a more fulfilling life. If you do not yet have peace and you want more peace, if you want more serenity, if you want more integrated, peaceful understanding of who you are and how to move through the world, despite all the stressors in the world, I invite you to take Emotional Strength Training 30 Days to Peace. It starts on the 1st. This course I created, it is the simplest, easiest way I have ever come across. It's also the most fun to grow into learning how to give this body peace. All you have to do is come sign up. You can use the code BADASS if you're a listener of the show and save 30% and spend 5 to 15 minutes. Most are 8 to 10 minutes a day. It'll come directly into your inbox, and for 30 days out of this one precious life, you will give yourself a chance to practice peace daily. This is a muscle, and it strengthens or it atrophies. At the end of these 30 days, you will have simple tools you'll never forget. You'll have some that stay in your pocket all of your life. Simple, easy, small, immediately accessible techniques that can bring peace into your mind, peace into your body, no matter what is happening in your own personal life or out there in the bigger world. If you're a Patreon member, come get your 50% off coupon for the course. I am so grateful to have you. We heal this world one person at a time, and when you practice peace, you are subconsciously giving everyone around you permission to be more peaceful, whether they know it or not. You get to be powerful in your peace for you and for the world. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass, and together we are where Moxie meets mindful. Till next time, take care of yourself, and I'll be right here with a brand new episode. Bye-bye.